You got Sam? Chris? Councilman Notes? And myself. I believe that Mr. Bolton is on his way. So let's look at the January 29th minutes, please. And I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion by Chris. Any second?
I'll second.
Second by Sam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next item is public comments.
So, I don't know how the board would like me to do it. I can speak now, or we can wait till we get the agenda. I don't know how you want to do it.
Just introduce yourself for the record and go right ahead.
Just speak here. You don't need to speak to the other chair.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Josh Coop. We've met a couple times already. I'm here today to continue our conversation on the agenda item for the 185 money and regarding the status of David McLeod. So I have some questions. Last meeting we kind of left it off, our attorney kind of left it off with, I guess we were going to go back and do some research and find out if in fact he is contributing or what his status is. So I have a couple questions for Adam here. Where are we at on that?
Okay, so this is public comments, and trustees, I can discuss it under the attorney's report, or we can try to discuss it now. I defer to the board on how you want to do it. It's probably more efficient if we do it now. Or do we want to wait until we get to the attorney's report?
So do it now.
We might as well.
Okay, so a little bit of background. So the issue last week had to do with the attorney for the union coming to discuss topics. So since that meeting, I've done a little bit of research with our administrator, and let me give a little bit of background to everybody. So the background is there was a tax issue, and that tax issue has been corrected by an ordinance which was adopted. That ordinance allows for what are called in-service distributions. What is an in-service distribution? An in-service distribution, and this is the IRS code, allows you to pay a member who hits retirement age, to pay them that monthly benefit as long as the plan has an in-service distribution provision. So we've now added into the pension plan, into both plans, an in-service distribution provision, consistent with the tax code. And the tax code only allows you to do it if people hit certain requirements. They have to be of a certain age, and there are certain IRS bells and whistles. So the ordinance that was being asked about at the last meeting applies with the IRS requirements and allows in-service distribution. So that's a little bit of background. So the second topic is, to what extent has that in-service distribution been applied? And the quick answer is, my understanding, and the administrator can speak to this or others can speak to it, is that we have 2 members who are now going to be receiving, under this new ordinance, in-service distributions, which are now allowed, again, under the IRS code. And the question is, how is that being administered and how is it being handled? And my understanding is that, and I don't know the names necessarily, but for the 2 instances, one is either a former chief or a current chief. And let me point out that a chief does not have to be a member of a 185 plan. So we all know that. We are a Chapter 185 pension plan. What does that mean? Chapter 185 pension plans are set up under Chapter 185 Florida statute. So the first quick observation is that for a 185 plan, all other members of the plan, other police officers who are full-time police officers, are required to be members of the plan. If you're a police officer, under state law, as long as we participate under the 185 program, Chapter 185 Florida statutes, all police officers have to be in the plan with one exception. Who is that one exception? Quick answer, the police chief. And it's the same idea for firefighter pension plans. For 175, for firefighter pension plans, there is one firefighter who does not have to be in the fire plan, the fire chief. Not assistant chiefs, not anyone else. If you're a police officer sworn, if you're a firefighter who meets the definition of firefighter or police, then you have to be in the plan. So a police officer never has to be in if he's the chief. So that's one quick observation. But what about someone who is not a police chief? And the issue here has to do with, and I'm trying to answer questions that have been asked. If you are in the drop, understand how drop works. So I want to feel free to have people ask questions. So what is drop? Drop means that you've hit retirement age and you choose to continue working and you lock in your pension benefit. And drop is very common. The state of Florida has a drop plan for the Florida retirement system. So drop stands for Deferred Retirement Option Plan, DROP. So for a drop participant, you've hit retirement age and you decide, I could start collecting my pension and go move away somewhere else and get my pension benefit paid every month. But instead, I enter into the drop program and the pension plan pays me my check, but it stays in the plan, so it's a bookkeeping entry. So a drop participant doesn't separate from service ordinarily, and they receive that monthly benefit that stays in the plan, so they lock in their pension, and they're retired for pension purposes, but they keep working. So everybody follow what a drop participant is? So now the question is, police chief does not have to be in the plan, but what about a drop member? And the quick answer is a drop participant is retired for pension purposes. So we understand that a second member of our plan is a drop participant who is rehired approximately 30 or so days. And the question has been asked, is that okay? And the quick answer is that we've got some cities that have an 8-year drop. We've got some cities that have a 3-year drop. So the argument is being made that because we have a drop participant, there is a drop loophole is the way it's being described. And under the drop loophole, if the city had wanted to amend the ordinance and allow people to stay in the drop instead of 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, there are some cities that do that to allow continued drop participation. So I'm giving a little bit of background for everybody. So does that answer your question? We have a police chief and we have a non-police chief. Both, I understand, are drop participants, and we have corrected the 175, 180, we've corrected the tax law issue by having an ordinance passed that allows in-service distributions. In-service distribution, you pay somebody who's still working for you. So that ordinance was successfully passed, and it was created and written by tax professionals, so we're very comfortable with the law firm that drafted the tax provisions. And on the 185 piece of the conversation, the argument is being made that because a drop participant is already retired, then that would satisfy the requirements of Chapter 185 is the argument. So that's a little bit of background for everybody.
So, I just want to make sure that we're all clear. Are you saying that McLeod, lieutenant, he's lieutenant, he doesn't have to contribute to the plan because he's in the drop program? Is that what you're saying?
So that is the issue. So if we're talking about a lieutenant who is not a police chief, the argument is that as a lieutenant who is a drop participants do not have to contribute to the plan because they are already retired. So that is the status. And just getting everybody up to speed. The police have already started. We are under public comments for the police, so general employee can be called when we get a chance. And I'm answering a couple questions that are being asked.
Oh, I'm sorry, you done?
Are you finished, Mr. Lopez?
Right, so I've given a summary that the ordinance was passed. It addresses the tax issues, and questions have been asked about the 185 status. And that if we treat drop as a loophole, so to speak, then the ordinance would satisfy because these are two members who are drop participants. And I would argue it would be very different if these two individuals were not drop participants, because drop participants are already retired, as opposed to if someone had been in the plan and retired, been gone for a year or 2 years, and if they'd been rehired, they would not be a drop participant. And in that situation, if someone was not a drop participant, there's a much stronger argument that Tallahassee could make that that kind of a rehire would have to be put back in the plan and accrue new benefits. But for a drop participant, there is an argument that a drop participant is different because drop is a different animal. And some people refer to drop, and I'm being colorful here, as sort of a unicorn. Drop is you're retired, but you're still working. So that's the quick answer to the question. Here, the argument is that there is a drop loophole that would allow rehire of drop participants.
So, when you say drop participant, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Are you saying that he's currently participating in the drop program? Is that what you're saying?
Thank you for the clarification. And trustees, public comments is what we're doing now. But these are questions that are being asked to the attorney, so it's really my comments, not public comments. But with that said, it's an excellent clarification. So what we have, just so we're clear, is we have drop participants, and I don't know the specifics of each situation, but a drop participant who had left for approximately 30 days was then brought back in, and they are a drop participant who the money is being paid to them directly because they, normally drop is paid into your drop account while you're still working. But after you separate, then we start paying the monthly benefit, and that's exactly what the ordinance allows. The ordinance is very clear. This is the ordinance that was adopted in the last 6 months or so. The ordinance provides that if you're a drop participant, then we can pay it to you directly at the conclusion of the regular drop period. So these are drop participants, and we are paying them monthly benefits, which again, the tax law is okay with that, and the plan allows it, and it satisfies the tax requirements. And if we treat drop as a loophole, as an exception, then this would be acceptable under Chapter 185.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment?
Yes. Are you gonna put that in writing, that he's exempt from that? Because I believe that's not correct. Once he's separated from the department, he's no longer a participant in the drop program. He's completed the drop. So I want to ask, are you going to put that in writing?
So, trustees, I'm assuming that this is recorded, but my client is the board and pension trustees.
And
So, I'm sorry, so if I am directed to put something in writing, we are happy to do it. If I'm directed to seek guidance from Tallahassee, I'm happy to do it. But I'm not planning on spending the time and expense of doing a legal opinion unless we get direction to give it formal legal opinion.
well, I would ask the board to take a vote today to ask Adam to put that in writing, to get his legal opinion.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, public comment?
Hi, yeah, my name's Al Crespo. I'm a resident. The reason I'm recording this, I publish a blog, and I write about the village on occasion. So my question is, Lieutenant McLeod was in the drop, and he completed the drop. He officially completed his 5 years, retired. So he's not really in the drop anymore. He's now a retiree, correct?
So that is another good question. And the quick answer is that drop is almost by definition, and don't quote me on this, but it's a gray area. Drop is, you're working, but you are by definition retired. But I agree with the thrust of your question, which is he completed, if I understand correctly, I don't know the specifics, but I understand completed 5 years of drop participation, was rehired, but he is still a drop participant because he had gone into the drop. So it's a question of nomenclature and definitions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And
Let me make a comment. If you have questions, instead of our attorney just answering, write the board a letter with your questions, and then we will address it with the attorney so we can be specific on any response and we can understand what you're asking. Okay?
Good suggestion.
All right.
anything further? Would general pension like to start, or should we continue on the?
So if we don't have our chair at the moment, then I agree with the manager that the initial decision would be to appoint an acting chair, and the secretary, by the way, can serve that role also. And if we don't have our regular chair, I'm looking at the agenda for the general employees, and quickly, I apologize. So for the general employees, my suggestion is to do an acting chair for today, if that makes sense.
John?
All right. I'll call the General Employees Pension Pension Board to order. Alice, have they run through, where are they, up to?
Public comments.
We're up to item 4, which is approval of warrants.
Okay, so item number 2 on our agenda is approval of the minutes of January 29th, 2019. Can I have a motion, please? Have a motion and a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item, public comment.
Yeah, I have a question. Are you beginning to receive any additional money, Tom, from the pension?
Me personally?
Yeah,
No, sir.
you're not getting any,
Not at all.
your drop is still part of the pension
Not at all. Yep, frozen.
frozen? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Public comment closed. Item number 4, approval of payment warrants. We have warrant number 2019-005 in the amount of $1,350 for attorney's fees.
Want to approve?
Have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second. A motion and second. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay. For police officers, the approval of payment warrant 2019-006. The amount is $3,625. It consists of payments to Klausner, Kaufman, Jensen through April of 2018. And then similar professional fees to Klausner, Kaufman, and Jensen throughout, rendered through March 2019. Do I have a motion for police warrant 2019-006?
I'll make a motion to approve the warrant 006. Second.
Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Our item number 5 has further warrants for the police officers. So item 5 consists of police warrant 2019-005. That police warrant, it pays Integrity Fixed Income Management and Co. for consulting services. The total is $11,189.14. The other, we can take the other warrants separately or together if you wish, but I need a motion on 2019-005.
I'll make a motion on 5 to accept. I'll second.
Can I second, please? Thank you.
Second is fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next warrant is police officer 2019-004 for $8,443.23. That consists of an authorized payment to Integrity Fixed Income Management for the period ending 12/31/18, as well as a payment to Bank of New York Mellon Investment Management ending 12/31/18, for a total of $8,443.23.
I'll make a motion for 04.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I have a question.
Okay,
Point
question?
point clarification. It looks like for the BNY Mellon invoice 14507. So 4949.81, and I'm just looking at the invoice. The invoice looks like total due is 7819.21.
It's for both plans.
That's, okay, so I just want to make sure I had that right. Thank you.
Trustees, a real quick observation. So there was a name change with this manager, which often happens. So we had to do an addendum to their contract to capture the new name of the institute, or of the institution. And just so everybody knows, I'm a Alexander Hamilton fan. So it's BNY Mellon Retirement Management is investment management at the top if you look at that invoice. And BNY was the bank started by Alexander Hamilton. This is in fact one of the first companies to trade on the New York Stock Exchange.
Just further, not on that, that was interesting. However, just on this, shouldn't there be separate invoices because it is titled Miami Shores Village Police Retirement?
It does look for both the same.
So shouldn't you make sure that they separate it so we are just getting invoice for what we're trying to approve?
Yeah. We'll ask him, or maybe Dave West could help us get that done.
Thank you.
Okay, and warrant 2019-003 has to do with education. Sam Rauda and Chris McDonald attended the conference, FPTA conference, And the total expenditure for that is $1,457.41. Do I have a motion on 2019-003? Question?
You guys, what did you guys learn at the conference?
You want a 10-page report?
To make sure he's doing his job.
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting.
Good.
This is no, learn a lot.
Very informative. Good.
Oh, yeah, no, a lot of information.
Okay.
Okay, under our warrants here for the general employees, we have warrant 2019-004 in the amount of $8,101.20. It's to ANCO and Integrity. Can I get a motion for that? For those two? Have a motion, second, motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Second warrant is 2019-003 in the amount of $4,640.99. And that is to Integrity, I believe. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're up to our first quarter investment result, item number 6.
Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. I can be mercifully brief this morning. As everyone's aware, we've had a pretty awesome recovery in the financial markets. While you're turning to page 2 for our usual executive summary of what transpired during the quarter, let me just hit maybe one high point that I think is most significant as far as impacting program investments during the quarter. Clearly, as we communicated last quarter, the whole equity market correction was in isolation. We looked over to the bond market participants to see if they had any concerns about what was going on in the marketplace, and the bond market was very, very calm. So this confirmed that either A, the bond market had already priced in a recession and a big slowdown, or that the bond market paid absolutely, gave no credence whatsoever to equity market concerns. Fast forward, long story short, the bond market was correct. The equity market correction was completely unfounded and isolated, arguably, to computer program trading, algorithmic activity out there. So, and another piece of information just came out, I think it was either Friday or yesterday, I think it was Friday, right? The GDP number came out, and gross domestic product for the quarter actually was 1% higher than expected, came in at 3.2%. So as the pendulum swings and sentiment swings, we really set ourselves up with a lot of good pessimism, and I say good pessimism, because it's a wall of worry that drives equity prices higher. And we're still in that environment. Generally, investors and economists are still skeptical, still looking for a slowdown, and investors are still really fighting this equity market rally. Fundamentally, everything looks pretty solid, and we should have a continued productive environment going forward for investments. So all in, page 2, looking at the sharp reversal, top right chart there for the quarter. International equities, looking at the 3 benchmarks across the board there, up 10% or so. Flag blue, the S&P 500 at home, up 13.6%. Smaller cap stocks, again, this is a risk back on, right? So small, mid cap stocks outperform large stocks, up 16.5%. And then in the green shaded area, interestingly, rates did decline a little bit during the period, so we actually earned more than the bond coupon. So the investment grade bond benchmark there, the Bloomberg Barclays aggregate, was up almost 3%, 2.9%. And this is kind of the ancillary point. If you flip up to page, go to page 9. And I just want to cover this for the trustees here, because this is a big news item, very popular topic, and that's the, quote, shape of the yield curve, right? So if you look at the bottom right chart there, you can look at the green shaded line there. This is where interest rates ranging from 1-month T-bills on the left all the way out to 30-year Treasury bonds going out to the far right. These are the yields that are available. And as you can see from the 1 month on out to the 10-year, the yield curve is what is being popularly termed as being inverted. In other words, short-term rates are higher than long-term rates. And this historically portends a recession, but I would argue that it also may portend a slowdown. It doesn't have to be a recession. And the media hype and all the concerns and arguably some of the equity market hysteria was over the shape of the yield curve and what this may or may not be today. But again, I think you can be in the camp that says, okay, bond market might be forecasting a shift in rates and a possible slowdown in the economy, but certainly the Fed, the other big news item for the quarter, announced that they're going to stop their interest rate hikes for the time being anyway, and they're going to stop the liquid management, taking liquidity out of the system through their management of the balance sheet. So two huge items having great and positive impact on plan results in the quarter. So let me back into this one, the report this time. Let's take a look at the asset allocation on page 12. And in both the police and the general employee system, we continue to advocate being overweight equities, and we are also overweight growth equities stylistically, with the idea that growth stocks typically lead us out through the end of the cycle. Again, we have no idea how long this chapter is going to read, as far as how long this investment cycle is going to last. But growth stocks have definitely been the leadership group there. Appropriately, we were overweight, so that provided a big boost to the program returns. And we continue to modestly underweight investment grade fixed income, 2% and almost 5% actually in the general system. So we were underweight those assets that weren't performing as well, and we were overweight those assets that did perform very well. So we were properly positioned to go in and take a look at page 16. Okay, for the general plan, that's going to be on page 15. So starting with returns for the quarter for the police system, the total fund was up 10.22% for the quarter, huge quarter. It'd be nice if we could close the books there, but unfortunately, on a fiscal year-to-date basis, we're still trailing. We still have a negative return of 0.97%. For the general system, the fund's up 10.6%, and fiscal year-to-date trailing just a little bit more, 1.35%. If you note the total fund policy, obviously that's our investment allocation that we're running here at Index. That's our self-imposed benchmark for performance measurement. Our policy was actually positive, 0.73 and 0.38 for the general system. So we left some money on the table, and there was really only one manager that underperformed the benchmark during the period, and that was Boston Company. Boston came off a very nice run and actually had a bad quarter in the December quarter. They weren't able to make it up. If you drop down to the Boston equity line there, you can see they were under the benchmark for the quarter by 1.65. And on a fiscal year-to-date basis, that had them lagging by about 5%. Longer-term numbers for Boston Company, very good. Ahead of benchmark on the 3-year, top 30th or so percentile, and the 5-year number also annualizes about 0.5% above the benchmark with a underperformance there. Now, on the flip side of that, I just want to take a brief minute here to give accolades to the Wells Fargo Growth Fund. Again, this is a fund that was under intense scrutiny, and for lack of a better term, I was almost on the railroad tracks on this one, but we have extreme confidence in the manager process. Markets did turn around about a year and a half ago now, so the investment environment was very favorable for this growth manager. For the quarter, they were up 19.8% versus the Russell 3000 Growth Index, which was up 16%. Fiscal year to date, they're almost even, down 1 versus 2.8. And that 1 year number, annualizing at 13%, top 26th percentile. 3 year number, 19.78%, top 10th percentile. And they're slowly chipping away at that underperformance that remains out there from that year and a half period a couple of years ago. So news is very good. Again, with the 2020 vision lining up, what transpired in the market, should this manager have done well, confirming yes, but they did very well actually for us. So very fortunate decision, fortunate for me, I guess, that we recommended staying on board with this particular manager. So those are the high points that I wanted to bring up as far as investment returns, unless anyone had any questions on the percentage returns. I'll close with the cash flow for both systems. So if we go to page, same will be on page 15 for the police report, and page 14 for the general report.
So for future reports, whenever you see Boston Equity, that's now going to be Mellon BLI. Mellon.
And we're victims of habit, so we'll try to change in there. But it's still the Boston company and still the peak investment manager in place there. So.
Have they changed management?
Yeah. Yeah, Boston, that was my point. Good question. Boston company is still, that whole team, that boutique is still 100% in place. If they did, even for good question. All right, so let's cover the police first on page 15. And in the interest of time, let's do the fiscal year-to-date reconciliation. That'll be the lower table. So if you follow with me, total fund opened the fiscal year with $26,704,924. Our net transfers show all of the movement of funds, as you know, between managers. So clearly we captured the transition out of Cutwater as our former bond manager and into Integrity. That was completed obviously during the December quarter. Contributions, fiscal year to date, $236,248. Distributions for benefit payments, $786,264. Investment management fees, those fees invoiced and paid by the custodian, $19,867. Other line item expenses from various places, $54,869. Our return on investment is broken down into income, where we earned $1,143,000. The depreciation component was a little bit more still to date than the income earned, $1,440,000. So that still left us in a deficit position of $297,267. We take the snapshot market value 331 of $25,782,905. Any questions on the cash flow? All right, let's do the general system. And again, the lower table, fiscal year to date. We opened up with $15,149,786. Again, the same management change there, Cutwater to Integrity, showing up in the net transfer line. Contributions for this system were $207,266. Benefit payments for distributions, $277,911. Investment management fees for this plan were $13,004. Other expenses, $47,738. Our net return on investment, again, negative $207,677 fiscal year to date. The positive component, of course, was income, where we earned $659,885. Depreciation component, $867,563. So we took a snapshot, 331, with assets totaling $14,810,722. Any questions on general fund cash flow?
Remind me what the other expenses are again?
So other expenses would be categorically barn door, any non-investment management level expenses generally. So those may have been taken out of manager accounts, but we're trying to group those as a separate expense category. Does that address the question?
No, I think so.
No, it
If
doesn't.
you have any additional questions on that, I'd be happy to follow up.
Okay.
So that's my summary for both systems. Again, excellent news. And as we review the asset allocation, I have no action items right now. I think the best action is to stay the course with the overweight 2 equities. Obviously, that has increased somewhat. So I'm hopeful that at the next meeting, we will have to make a recommendation that we rebalance equities back to policy targets. We think the investment environment remains constructive, and the year's not over until it's over. So we'll keep the faith I think we're very appropriately invested in the current environment with both systems. That's my report. Thanks, everyone.
Item number 7, attorney report. Wilson.
So the good news is it's a relatively short attorney's report, and what I'm going to focus on today is the Florida legislative session. The Florida legislature is just about to finish, and at the last meeting I gave everyone a heads up that there was a bill, House Bill 265, that was coming. And you know how Tallahassee works. Sometimes a bill is not adopted the first year, then maybe people get educated about it, it gets adopted the second year, they refer to this rule of threes. That sometimes it takes 3 years for a bill to be adopted, but we wanted to pay close attention to House Bill 265. What was 265 when we talked about it last meeting? It would prevent any of the folks who work for the board to give out a report at a board meeting. Instead, those reports would have to be put on the city website so anyone from the public could see any material that trustees see prior to the board meeting. So, you know, the idea was more transparency. But one of the issues is that once you start putting things on the website, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just describing what the bill would have done, that raises ADA issues, and some of these books are not necessarily ADA compliant with all the charts. So the quick answer is that House Bill 265 has not moved. So it's going to be up to the cities to decide for themselves and the boards whether or not they want to put all these booklets and other information online. You can, but you're not required to. You just have to do the agenda and the minutes, etc. You don't have to do all the reports. So House Bill 265 has not moved, but it may come back next year, we'll see. The other quick observation for the attorney's report is at the last meeting, it gave you the heads up about a memo that our office was working on. Because Tallahassee, which is the Division of Retirement, when we get our 185 money, our premium tax money from Tallahassee, by doing reports that have to be submitted every year. So they prepare a summary for the legislature of all of the 480 or so municipal pension plans in Florida. So you name the city, there's a good chance that many cities have their own pension plans just like us. So Tallahassee puts together a report for the legislature that gives really granular level detail. So I talked about that memo at the last meeting, and it's dated February 6th, so feel free if anyone wants to talk about it, but I already summarized it for you. So that was our memo, which again summarized information from across the state, so you can compare yourself to other plans. Feel free to look it through. It's good reading at your leisure when you need to fall asleep and you're having trouble. But it's data, so it's nothing that requires action. Just background information. We can always talk about it at future meetings. The last quick observation to round out the attorney's report, unless there are any questions, is that we also sent out a memo about tax law changes in the context of divorces. So to the extent that someone goes through a divorce, that has now changed with these new tax law updates. It has changed the way that divorce payments, either equitable distribution or alimony or child support, get characterized for tax purposes. So there was a memo that summarizes that. When they want to put some of that information, there's a nice paragraph in future editions of the summary plan description. But the quick answer is, no one on this board gives tax advice to members. Instead, we tell people to have a conversation with their tax advisor, and that's basically what the paragraph would do if we added into our summary plan description, which has to be updated every 2 years, basically telling them there's a change in the law, and feel free to consult with a tax advisor on tax issues. So that will conclude the attorney's report unless there are any questions.
I have one quick question related to that 185. Does anything stop you from going to the Division of Retirement to make sure that the loophole is a good loophole and it's documented so that we're not violating 185? Without saying, hey, this is my insurance, potentially sworn up.
So let me restate the question. So earlier under public comments, I was asked several questions, and I described how the ordinance that was adopted solves for tax issues. So that's good, and we're completely on board with that. The issue you're asking me about is, does that ordinance implicate, or do any of our practices implicate Chapter 185? So to give you a quick answer, the Division of Retirement has not objected about this for the last X number of years, so they've said nothing about it. The second quick answer is that I described how drop is a gray creature. Right, it sort of has 1 foot retired, 1 foot not retired. So nothing stops me at any time from talking to Tallahassee, and we routinely talk to Tallahassee about various issues. But I do not ordinarily, unilaterally, reach out to Tallahassee to ask them questions. And it's a philosophy question. You know, if there's a regulator, do you want to go to the regulator and knock on their door and potentially create issues, or do you want to leave things alone? So I think the quick answer is nothing stops me from doing it, but ordinarily I don't reach out to them unless the client wants me to reach out to them. But you know, if the board were to direct me to do anything, then I'm happy to do it. But right now, at the moment, we see no reason that there's any urgency to reach out to Tallahassee.
The question is, are we in violation of the 185? Are we jeopardizing the 185 money getting away currently as it stands right now?
So the question, again, similar issue is, does Tallahassee, and remember how this works. We get money from Tallahassee every year. We prepare reports, and we have to comply with Chapter 185. And to the credit of trustees, you're asking, does our practice with regard to the rehire of police officers, and I'm telling you there is no issue at all for a police chief, because a police chief doesn't have to be in our plan at all. But in the context of someone who is not a police chief, who is a draw participant, and we could argue and debate about what does a draw participant mean in this context. So you're asking, does that violate Chapter 185? And my answer is it's a gray area, that Tallahassee has not objected about it. There are arguments that can be made that there is a drop loophole. So if Tallahassee agrees that this is a drop exception, a drop loophole, then there's no violation. If, on the other hand, and by the way, Tallahassee sometimes changes its opinion depending upon who's in power and using a pendulum in a way. So the quick answer is we think that there is a good faith argument that can be made that there is a drop loophole or a drop exception. But until ultimately a court decides that, or Tallahassee sends us a letter saying they're not happy with it, it's an exception that we are hanging our head on. Any other questions for the attorney's report?
Thank you.
I want to bring up something more in reference to we approved a warrant on the last meeting that was invoiced by GRS in reference to an impact study that was paid by us. I thought it was paid by the city. I think we did. Mr. Falcon was telling me that he read the board appeal.
Yeah, that was the impact that GRS did on the people staying on the plan after they have retired. So I think that there was a comment that the village had paid for it.
That was my mistake, yep. You called me about that, yes,
Right.
sir. Forgot about, yep, he did. He called me and asked me, I checked with our finance director, and Doug is correct.
So is it a bill that should be paid by the village or the pension plan?
Is there a question?
Well, the pension plan has paid the bill, so the question now is, should it really
Which bill are we referring to?
It's the GRS bill where they looked at the issue of continued employment after retirement.
And this was a request made to them by this body?
I believe that the request was made by the village.
The request was made by the village?
I believe so.
Not by the pension board?
Correct.
So we paid a bill for them to give us an opinion?
Well, they
On
did an
that
impact
question.
study about whether it was an impact study that was done in relation to the ordinance that dealt with the continuing employment.
And what was the amount of the bill?
I think it was just a few $100s.
Like 400 and change.
Right.
But this request was not made by the pension board.
Correct.
So you brought that up, so are you opposed to us paying that?
We already paid for it. The question is, what do we need to do in order to,
Unpaid
if
for
you
it?
would
pretty much?
authorize
Unpaid
me,
for
then
it?
I'll contact the village and.
Reverse it out, we'll pay for it on, yeah,
Right.
so I spoke to
Yeah.
Holly about it.
Oh,
All
okay.
right.
All right.
Suzanne, would you like to make a motion that, and you don't have the exact amount
Sure.
of the bill, but
I don't have the
you
exact
can just say
amount.
the approximate amount and put that in the form
So
of a motion.
how would that be executed, as a negative warrant?
Will be a credit.
So a credit?
Yeah, will be a credit.
Okay.
So we'll do the.
So would you revise the warrant that we paid it under?
What would
I
you
mean, I don't
prefer?
wanna get too down in the weeds, but so
It'll
we
be
will
a-
be credited back?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. We'll enter it as a negative line item.
So you wanna make a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion to reimburse the 400 and change, I guess, dollars,
Right.
in reference to GRS impact study for the last warrant, for it to be reimbursed.
Very good, thank you. You got a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, item 8 for the police side is the administrative report, Salem Trust, change of ownership.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we found out in the first week in April, I don't know if Dave West has any comments about it, but as in most cases, particularly in banks, there were no rumors floating around, but Salem went through a process which they describe as a friendly takeover. Salem itself is a multi-billion-dollar operation, and for various reasons, they have decided to allow themselves to be brought into a company called TMI Trust Company. Your Salem representative would like to come to the next meeting and discuss it. You know, what we've been told is that they're keeping all of the offices, they're keeping all the people, they're keeping all their systems, and I think they're even keeping the name, right? So, we don't think it's any sort of major change, but Salem did ask to come in and speak with you directly about it. And again, they wouldn't have been able to do so prior to the sale actually happening.
And if I might add, our Inco and Salem Trust Management actually met prior to the public announcement. I mean, the deal was done, but our management team met to discuss the acquisition. We went through our common, obvious concern list of questions, and came back with basically the same conclusion that appears to be a friendly merger. It's an acquisition, but we view it as a friendly merger. There shouldn't be any changes or disruptions to the service we're receiving. We've always regarded Salem Trust as one of our preeminent, better quality service providers. And you know, we hope this will be the case, but with any merger and acquisition, there is a change in management at the top. TMI is a trust company. This is the business we're in, so hopefully there'll be some economies of scale recognized as a result of the acquisition, and you know, hopefully the positive outcome for us, all of us, will be that you know, we're able to keep fees at a reasonable minimum going forward. So we'll wait and see how it goes. No actions. We don't recommend taking any actions. We're not putting up any red flags at this time.
Okay.
So I have a question. So if Karen Russo comes, that's at no cost to us?
Correct.
Doing this?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
A couple of other just ministerial things. There are a couple of conferences we wanted all the trustees to know about. One is Adams firm puts on an annual conference, which is free to the trustees, although probably there would be some hotel expense. We attend them every year. They're wonderful things. They're local. They're not far away. They're up in Fort Lauderdale. And of course, Adams Company is one of the leading pension attorney firms in the country, not just in the state of Florida, so we highly recommend that. There's also conferences that the FTPTA sponsors, and I'm sure the people that in this room know about that. We did have one item for the police board related to a discussion of the share accounts. There's been a lot of talk about 185 chapter money. There has been a surplus that's developed in the 185 money that will now be distributed via share accounts. So the participants and the village will share equally in the surplus in the 185 account. And I was asked to put two names down, Eddie Ramos and Lieutenant McLeod. Eddie Ramos was a participant who exited the drop and ceased employment after the date the collective bargaining agreement was in effect and after the date that the collective bargaining agreement between the village and the police union was signed. Lieutenant McLeod, again, I would think is a little bit more of a difficult situation about whether that individual would have access to a share account, and I think we'll have to rely on the attorney for a recommendation on that one. The share accounts are part of the actuarial evaluation. My understanding is your valuation is done. Originally, your actuary was going to present at this meeting, and they had a conflict, but the valuation, the annual benefit statements, and the share accounts will all come out at the same time.
Trustees, I have a suggestion. So remember at the last meeting, I believe we authorized the actuary to prepare these once a year share plan statements. And again, this is because of amendments that have been made over time to Chapter 185. Because this is a legal issue as to whether or not McLeod and Ramos are entitled to share in that money. And what I would look at the CBA as applicable. I would also look at the ordinance. And I would be happy to give a written legal opinion if I'm authorized to do that by the board. Because I don't think the actuary wants to make these kind of classification decisions. So I would be happy to do that. But I don't want to incur additional expenses unless I have the authorization from the board to do that homework. And I'm also curious if anyone from the room has any, let's call it ground floor local information that might assist me in that conversation. But I'd be happy to do that opinion if authorized.
I think we need to take, we're deciding for the board, whether or not we pay it out, what we pay out, how we pay out, if we're legally allowed to pay it out or not. Legally, if it's their money, it's their money.
So, what is the issue?
Well,
Whether they should
the
be
issue
allowed.
is you have two people that are not well defined as far as their status and whether they're eligible for a share account.
A share account.
Share.
Do you want to explain the share account?
Sorry. Before I explain it.
He
Yeah.
started before you came in. Okay.
Right, so what is a share account? And this is relatively new for us. So the quick answer is the majority of our benefits and all of the general employee benefit is a defined benefit. It's a DB pension. But now for police, we are now creating for the first time share accounts, which is a DC or a supplemental benefit. And the supplemental benefit, different cities do it differently. In some cities, retirees do not get to participate in the supplemental benefit. Usually, and it's hard to say because different cities do it differently. So the supplemental benefit Some cities allow it to be shared by retirees. Now, what about a drop participant? A drop participant, as we talked about earlier, is retired for pension purposes, but is still working for wearing a bulletproof vest and going to work every day. So I'm going to want to look at the CBA if I'm asked to do the work. I'm going to want to look at the ordinance and see, do either of those answer the question? Rather than me making it up, let me see what our documents say. And then I can come back to the next board meeting and give that answer to the actuary about what has been agreed by the parties. And at the moment, I don't know, because I don't regularly look at CBAs unless I'm authorized to do it.
So is the issue, is McLeod eligible for the, and Ramos eligible for the shared benefit? Have they requested the shared benefit?
Well, we don't have the calculations yet from the actuary.
Until the actuarial report is completed, we can't
Right.
even do the.
Do they have to make a request for it? I mean, are we jumping the gun here? I mean, should we wait till a request is made and then have it?
Well, I think we're gonna have to give the actuaries some guidance on who is eligible for a share account.
Oh, so it's like what's first, the cart or the horse here?
Will affect everybody else's.
I see. So then, in your opinion, this is an opinion that we are going to need in order to run our business?
See how you could complete the calculation without knowing.
Or maybe
Because
we don't
the
need
share
the
count-
calculation unless it's,
Right, the share counts are based on a surplus. The 185 money buys certain benefits, right? And the 185 money goes up and down every year depending on insurance premiums that are paid inside of the village for crime insurance. So it's a number that fluctuates, however, the cost of the extra benefit stays the same. So some years there's more money available, some years there's less money available. We've actually had a city where the promised benefits cost more than the money that goes to police, fire, more than the 175. The city, the plan sponsor had to kick in the extra money that was short. But in this case, because that there was an unresolved issue that spanned several years, there's a pot of money. So the first cut is going to be who's going to get a share in this pot of surplus. Village takes half, the other half gets
my
a share.
impression is the police officers sitting here on our board are interested in getting an answer to this question,
I just don't want to.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you are, then make a motion.
Well, I'm thinking,
Okay.
I'm sorry, just one thing. Eddie Ramos has separated the part of it since the last meeting, between the last
Correct.
meeting and this meeting. And, if I recall correctly, the last meeting, we also do something for Officer Jackson Thomas that already separated, the coming for that meeting. And we approved, what did we approve? Was that?
He exited.
Actually, it was ratifying the drop rate.
So that was the drop entry? Is
Drop
that the
rate.
same?
The exit, yeah.
12/1/2018.
It's the same.
Right, same.
It's the same case?
Same thing. They both left the village. The exit.
Okay, so this.
So we probably should ask him, yeah.
Okay.
We should probably add Officer St. Thomas since he separated employment on 12/1/2018, correct?
I think a lot of one, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ramos separated a few months later.
Okay, so thank you, Sam. So while you're thinking about the motion, I want to ask Mr. Robinson a question.
Sure.
So we now have a $400 credit on the police department side. We're getting ready to spend some money if we approve this. And that would be, if there were an objection, that would be my objection, is that, is if there was another way to go about it by, we have a collective bargaining agreement, which was recently signed, which has a value to all of us, and to the department, and to all the members. If there's a way that we could save by making some sort of an individual agreement with those affected, since there are only at most 3 people, I wonder if that might be preferable to having you comb through the entire collective bargaining agreement to come up with a legal opinion. That's my question.
Let me answer it this way, and I'm not sure if it is exactly answering your question. But if I were given the instruction to do a legal opinion, there are really 3 ways the legal opinion could work. One way is the CBA and the ordinance say something specific, and that's easy. So that could be a yes or a no, depending upon what this document said. So that's door one and door. Maybe we ask the city and the union, the village and the union to take the first crack at it. And that can inform my decision, by the way, in my opinion. And I may not need to reach an opinion if the principals are able to resolve it on their own and give that input back to us to help us. So I'm happy to wait to do the opinion. My one observation, though, is the longer it takes in order to come up with a definitive answer, as some of you pointed out, it holds up the process of doing everybody's share statements. But the share statements are only done once a year anyway.
I think I can shed some light on this, if you don't mind.
We're
So-
outside public comment, I'm sorry.
Well, as Adam just pointed out, you're just delaying the process here. The contract is clear. You have 6 months to do it. The whole share plan is in the contract.
It would be better if your police department.
I understand,
members
but
would
they're not as
articulate
informed as I
this.
am on it. I understand that, but I just want, it's important though that we get the information out there so that we don't have to keep the ball back and
Well, that's
forth.
what we're trying to do.
So it's in the contract. There's 6 months to pay out the fund. And Eddie Ramos is entitled to it because he is part of the collective bargaining agreement. Lieutenant McLeod is not part of the collective bargaining agreement, so he's not entitled to it. And he had separated before the agreement was signed anyway.
I appreciate your opinion, but
So
in
that's-
general,
Well,
basically, you're out of order.
Trustees, some boards, the chair has a gavel, and other boards, the chair doesn't have a gavel.
Yeah,
Respectfully. But, you know, it's entirely up to the trustees. If you want to give me instructions today, if you want to wait to the next meeting, and my view is that, you know, if you gather information, that is constructive to assist with the process.
Sounds like we need to get this resolved.
You'll be in violation
I'm
of
ready-
CBA if
excuse
you
me.
wait. So.
I'm ready to entertain a motion, should you have it.
Motions for
To direct the attorney to,
If
Make
you
an
wish
opinion.
to have the attorney make
Jesus
it
Christ.
on the shared
on
account.
the shared account,
like
for
right now.
the individual that's involved, and review the collective bargaining agreement as it relates to the ordinances.
So you think this is something that we should do? I know we asked that question, but is that necessary right now, or should we wait for the study, or not the study, the reports at the end of the year?
So these are all good questions, and there's a lot of discretion on the part of the board. There is no, in my opinion, correct answer. You have discretion. So you could authorize me to do an opinion today, or you could, maybe a Solomonic way of working and splitting the baby, so to speak, is to tell me to write an opinion once I get input first from the village and the union, and to capture the union and the village's input when I draft my opinion. Is that a way of making sense?
How to ask this, is
Yeah.
an opinion need to be, will an opinion from you need to be made at some point either today or a year from now on this?
Excellent question. So the quick answer is, in order for the actuary to give everybody their member statements, the actuary needs an issue of, to answer the question about who gets the share in the money. Because that's the more people that are sharing, you've got the numerator and the denominator. It's a bigger denominator when you do the math. So
So would the appropriate motion be when all of the actuarial figures are in place, we request a legal opinion? But
I
we
do have something
understand,
that may help you. I have the collective bargaining agreement, and so what it says is, except as provided herein, employees who are participating in the drop will be entitled to the other benefits of this agreement. This is in the section that deals with pension. So the question to the attorney, if you want to limit the scope, would be, is Officer McLeod considered to be participating in the drop? And as of the effective date of the collective bargaining agreement, I think that that would maybe shorten the review. You know, what's the effective date of the benefit and who's considered to be participating in the drop will narrow down the amount of work that your attorney would have to do, I think.
I hope this isn't a dumb question. I mean, is this complicated? I mean, what governs whether he's eligible or not?
Well, I think it's that one sentence. It's that one
Can
sentence.
you make that determination, or why does the attorney have to weigh in?
Well, you heard earlier that Officer McLeod is a drop participant.
Is this being contested by anybody?
But presumably, if you leave somebody out, they could contest it. So I think that if you're gonna have, in my opinion, if you're gonna have your attorney do any work, that's really the key section of your collective bargaining agreement. What does it mean to be participating in the drop? Does that mean your drop account is growing every month?
And I'm sorry, who typically makes this opinion, this decision?
I think that it would end up being your attorney. I'm just
So my
suggesting
attorney
to you
has
a
to
way
make
that
a
you
decision
can-
on who's eligible and who's not eligible.
Well, I
for all of
think
these
that you have to determine what's the definition of participating in the drop. You know, in other words, you may have people who are not employed here who still have drop accounts because they've let it sit for a period of time. So I think that you have some ambiguity perhaps, you know, that you as a board would have the right to determine the definition of
So
participating.
this isn't a decision that the administrator makes
Uh,
routinely?
No,
Okay, so the administrator won't make this decision for us?
no.
So if you won't make it, and I need
No,
somebody
the
to
board,
make
the
the
board
decision,
would, right.
so then we need the attorney to make the decision.
Or
So we can
attorney
move
to
forward
us.
on this thing and get past it.
Okay, but,
Madam Chairman?
And it's probably, what, a couple
Excuse
hours
me.
of effort?
John, you could- yes, Councilman Knowles.
Madam Chair, Board, what I'm understanding, and I hear from a bunch of different people, this could be a collective bargaining issue for determination. And all due respect to the attorney, we don't need the attorney to make this decision and incur his costs. We're well equipped with the information to make our own decision and direct the administrator. Therefore, I ask the village, and as well as the union, let them deal with this and present back to us for the next meeting what their positions are, and then we can make a decision.
That sounds
We'll
like
put
what
that in
the
the
attorney
form
was
of a motion.
recommending.
I'll move, as I just said, direct or request both the village and the union to provide their positions on this issue and before our next meeting, so we can make an informed decision.
Trustees, I would add to that, at that next meeting, it makes sense to have a copy of the CBA, which I assume is going to be cited to by the parties, and also to have a copy of the applicable ordinance provisions. So the CBA and the ordinance are really what the decision would be based upon with input from the parties.
Okay, I'm
I
looking for
second
a
it.
second. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bolton seconds. So now, any further discussion on this, please? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any nays?
No.
Okay, it's unanimous in favor of that motion. Thank you very much. Yoli, you have it? Okay. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? We have the next meeting July 30th.
In regards to that, July 30th would have to be at the 9900 building, or be second outlet.
9900 building, that's the recreation center?
It's on Second Ave.
9900 would be, it's right next to the police department.
Oh.
Remember we did it last summer?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, on the police side, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
So I want to make a public records request. There seems to be $107,000 in additional expenses for both of these pensions. I'd like to get the documentation for that $107,000. 47 for the police and 53 or whatever it is for the general, or vice versa. So I'll make that request to to whoever is responsible for it. Oh, my name is Al Crespo.
Al Crespo?
I will.
Yeah, we need it in writing.
Well, no, you don't need it in writing. Florida law doesn't require it in writing, but I will send it to
I
you.
will, I really appreciate it. You want me to give you my email?
Please, absolutely.
Okay, can I write it on?
You can write it on whatever you want to write it on. Thank you.
And this is to make sure that you get what you're asking.
Yeah. I will give you a
Now that I
specific
think about
detail
it, I
there.
can tell you what participating means that you're adding, I'm not adding,
Discretion.
right? No, really, that's participation, just having it.
So that's my name and that's my email.
Okay,
Okay?
you got it.
All righty.
Thank you.
And you spell your name this way for the minute?
Crespo, C-R-E-S-P-O.
Okay.
How do we get out of here? Oh. I got sunshine on a cloudy day. Well, another fun day in the village.
Oh, for sure no Jim Jam. That was the first one. That was like, no, yeah. Well, he did, I think, what it was, Jumping Jelly Beans or whatever it was, whatever the one last week, and he did one day of it, and then the rest of the week he didn't go back.
Andy, did Tom leave?
No, he's in your office.
I need to get his signature.
Go ahead and give that to work. Oh, like, I'll yell on it this way, this way.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Yeah. Is he in there? You see Tom? You find Mr. Benton?
Yes, he's voting.
Oh, is he?
So I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm just curious. If someone came in, there was a resident, like what's the, what would, like, because, or if you're a member. Because there's like that, because there's, what, it's 700 or something.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know, I mean, it ends up being, like, just this past year was so busy, there was no way to do other stuff. It's not. This is the under construction. Yeah.
For Jacqueline.
Okay. It doesn't make sense. On the card, you know, I have a feeling you'll see me in here again. We'll do more. You want to see the actual card? And that it changed, it went down. The one you're having up.
So we'll just keep having fun, right?
Okay. And then the 4th of July is probably one of the less days.
Hey, Pat.
Okay. Money.
Yes. Where are you? Card trying.
Is that all right?
All right.
Good.
Couple of Doritos, I'll make sure he's set up. Yeah, I'll call.
I am back. Not necessarily better, but that.
Yeah, I know, 2 years probably. So, all right, let me call.
I'm at it. Thank you all, just one right
Here are the new ones. You want the full thing? Or you want? Yeah.
No, I think it's okay. I think
Okay,
it's okay.
so this is the new one, so we only need 1, 2, 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay? So you said,
You know what? Because for his dad, he could be like wonderful with all of these. We'll bring him here by ourselves. So you're not able to like.
Hey, Dave, this is Jim. I'll be sure. Thank you.
okay, then don't worry about it. I'll just mark it.
Hey, Junior was telling me that
No, that's okay. It's okay.
you guys have a
We
real
can't do that.
business now, you're gonna start grinding the wheels on the boards and stuff. Is it seven, he was gonna go with seven, I got my real house over here, it's done.
No, that's fine. It's, the systems are all funny how they build the different things. We're fine.
Okay.
Okay. And it's, this is.
All right.
It's down
And,
here.
Same
have
with
they-
the tennis court, the next field house, the field house. And I know they're gonna be, it's always using Google too, so it's gonna be on the sides. You're gonna see the signs. Go to the,
Come on, come on, come on, come on. How are you?
Good to see you.
hey.
Hello, how are you?
Good to see you out
Okay,
here.
see you later. Yep.
See you on the way out.
Yep. Christian, how are you?
I'm great.
Hands full. Yeah, got all this
There you go.
Philly stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm helping Stephen LaFreda. I'm a consultant. Let me ask something.
Yeah.
The mayor in North Bay Village, the former mayor, she wanted to reach out to you to help us with the stuff that's going on over there.
I
Are you busy?
yeah, I try not to, no, there's Elaine the Valley. I know her. She's doing, I focus on this place in my story. And that's what I do here. I got nothing for you.
You want to do my interview?
No.
Really?
So the Elaine was doing my beach, she was doing my cables, instead of me doing my land, my beach.
Yeah, I work with stuff.
Yeah, so
I did funny stuff. Stephanie's kind of doing like North Miami,
Yeah.
North Miami Beach.
I don't have to.
You live in Rockland? Rockland?
I live in condos, right? All over the place.
I think it's no, but you did a good job. The only thing I really didn't understand was Dustin was doing a lot of mailing stuff, and I saw that you were putting the local stuff. I'm surprised Florida Election Commission didn't get involved at all.
Dustin knows where he